right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the world's most exciting classroom. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. It is World Ocean Week. So our plan for this week is to highlight some of our incredible ocean adventures that we've been on over the last 2 years. As you know, the Oosterschelde and the Darwin200 team left Plymouth in 2023. And we have been sailing around the world ever since. And we've had some incredible ocean encounters, some incredible ocean adventures, both on top and below the waves. So we're going to highlight some of those today as we celebrate our ocean. A few things to do to get ready for today. We are going to take a look at the map because we need to see where the ship is right now. When we last left her last week, we were in Ascension. So if I back out a little bit, you can see here we were in Ascension, this little speck, volcanic island, relatively young, geologically speaking, here in the Atlantic Ocean. We came from St. Helena back here. And if we pull out a little bit more, you can see where we left Cape Town. And that was back, over a month ago now. So yeah, here we are. We are making our way towards the Azores. This will be the last stop on the journey because after the Azores, we make our way back to the UK to Falmouth. And that is where we're going to wrap up the Darwin200 journey after 2 years. And we will arrive there sometime around likely the 18th of July. We have some special events planned. Then we'll have a little sail up to London. Then we have another event planned in London later in July. So we are quickly coming to the end of our voyage after 2 incredible years. You can see it won't be too long before we're passing Cape Verde, which was one of our stops when we left the UK back in 2023. So that's what's going on right now. We still don't have video communication with the ship. As we've talked about, our Starlink units, the maritime one we lost around here. And then as we were approaching St. Helena, pretty much a day away, we lost our backup unit, our roam unit. So we can still connect to the ship. They can send texts and things like that. But unfortunately, we are unable to have our video connections. We were live from Ascension last week, so I hope you're able to tune into that. We were able to use a Starlink unit someone had on Ascension. That was pretty special. But until we reach Azores, we won't be able to connect with the crew of the Oosterschelde. Hopefully, they'll be able to send us a few text updates, but we won't be able to have those fun video updates. So that is the lay of the land. That is what we are up to right now. I'm going to come back from that screen share. And I think we should get right into some of the action. So I'm going to share my screen. We are going to start right at the beginning of the journey. If you're tuning in with us today and you have any questions at any stage, there's a lot of video clips today of some really cool stuff we've encountered. Put them into the chat. If you're a camera group today, you can put it into the private chat. If you're tuning in via YouTube, put your questions in via the YouTube chat. And I'll pause throughout when I see questions pop up in between some of the clips, and we will answer some of those questions. But let's get into it. Let's take a journey around our blue planet. I'm going to share my screen one more time here. We want to do this today, and let's see how well it will cooperate with us. There we go. Let's go full screen, and let's hide that. That looks pretty good. All right, I'm going to tuck myself away so we get an even better full screen view, and we're going to get right into it. So we have to start with where we began, which was in Plymouth in the UK, and we have this great clip of the ship pushing away from dockside and beginning this crazy 2-year journey. So let's take a look at that together. All right, so there we go. That is us leaving Plymouth, about to start our 2-year journey around the world. Yeah, that is our ship, the Oosterschelde. It is a 3-masted schooner. It's over 100 years old. It's a Dutch tall ship, and the crew and the ship have been amazing to us on this 2-year journey. So let's continue onwards with some of the first things that we encountered on the journey. And this was our first really big marine life encounter. This is the second largest animal on the planet. Let's take a look at this little clip together. So this was off the coast of France, and this is a fin whale. This is the second largest animal on the planet. Maybe, just maybe, we'll have an encounter with the largest a little bit later in today's presentation. Here's our beautiful fin whale. Our camera operators are so skilled at launching the drones from the ship while it's moving, getting it out where they need to, and then getting it back on the ship. Of course, it's not easy, and from time to time, I think once or twice, we've lost a drone to the ocean, but that's just kind of what happens when you're launching in challenging conditions, like a moving ship with wind and things like that. So in our next clip, is what it looks like at night to be out and sailing on the ship, because the ship is never fully sleeping. There's always a watch going. So every 4 hours that watch switches and a fresh group takes over. And so at night, this is what it looks like on the deck under the moonlight. You saw that bioluminescence in the water. So that's dinoflagellates, little single-celled organisms that are frightened or disrupted by the movement of the ship, and that reaction is that little blue aquamarine light that you see. So we've seen that bioluminescence all throughout the journey. So it really is kind of dreamlike when you're out on the deck in the night. Beautiful stars on clear nights with no light pollution. It's absolutely beautiful. So that was as we were crossing the Atlantic Ocean. And when we got to the other side of the Atlantic, we were in Brazil. We spent quite a bit of time making our way along the coastline of South America. And one of our big stops was in Rio de Janeiro. And in some of the big ports around the world, I would come and join the ship with some Starlink technology. And we would do live events from the field. And so this was one of our first live World's Most Exciting Classroom events, when I was able to come join the ship from the field. And so we were doing some scuba diving off these little islands off the massive city, 12 million plus people of Rio de Janeiro. So let's take a look at this little clip from the dive boat. Right, well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the World's Most Exciting Classroom. You can see things are a little bit different today. I'm not in my downstairs office. I am in Rio de Janeiro with the Darwin200 team, and we are diving today. While I have my dive gear on deck, I'm going to take you guys back to the dive boat to show you what back to the dive boat looks like. I'll show you how I put my gear together. And I've got my gear set up over here, so I'll show you guys a little bit of the gear. This is what I'm using to breathe underwater. If I move up here, it's my regulator. So there's 4 hoses here. It changes the flow of the air so that I can breathe it more easily. So that's just a little glimpse at a dive boat. You can see people moving around, doing things, getting ready for dives. There's still people in the water. In fact, there's someone who just surfaced up over there. All right. So that was with one of our conservation partners. We were doing 2 things that day. One was looking for green sea turtles. There's a really healthy population of green sea turtles. And the other thing we were doing was removing invasive sun coral from the area. So to give a better chance for the native coral in the region. And It was not the best day for diving. It had been stormy some days leading up to that. So the water was really murky, but we did see some sea turtles. And the team was able to successfully remove some big baskets of that sun coral. We made our way down the coast to Argentina, and we stopped in a really cool spot called Puerto Madryn. And in Puerto Madryn, we used our ROV for one of the first times. So we had a little small remotely operated vehicle that we could put into the water and take a look at what was going on under the water. Sometimes scientists used it to look at coral and fish life. And this little clip is just from one time when we were using it for fun when we were at anchor. So we had the ROV in the water, and one of the locals got very interested in the ROV. So you can see this sea lion thought the ROV was pretty interesting. And so we were going around to see what we could see. We see little crabs at the bottom and things like that. But we could not shake our sea lion friend, which of course we didn't mind at all, because it's really great to be able to see marine life like this. So you can see this sea lion is quite interested in our ROV and was not shy to come up and take a look. We got a really good look at those whiskers. Those whiskers on the front are how the sea lion can sense its environment. So in murkier water, those whiskers can be really important to kind of feel around a little bit and what's going on in the water around them. So we got a nice close look at those whiskers from our sea lion friend. So as we get ready to go to our next clip, I want to remind classrooms, if you do have any questions as you're tuning in, don't be shy to put them in the private chat or put them into the comments, and we can pause in between some of the stories as we're traveling around the world together. And so we arrived in the Falklands. The Falklands is just such an amazing place. Many people compare it to something like the Galapagos, just with the biodiversity of life that you can find both in the water and on the land. And what's really cool about the Falklands is there's this huge nutrient transfer that happens. All of the seals and elephant seals and sea lions and seabirds and penguins, they're bringing nutrients from the ocean and then back onto the land when they come onto land to nest and rest and things like that. So this is a little highlight reel of some of that wildlife in the Falklands. So this is Stanley. This is where we had the ship. And then here we are. We've got some beautiful albatross. In the background, we've got some of our penguins. There's those beautiful albatross. We've got some Gentoo penguins there. As you can see, all the chicks there. Again, this gives you a real look at our camera operators and their skills. Here we've got an elephant seal. And so the males here come up onto the beaches and they are pretty aggressive. They want to control a harem, a group of females. And so they will fight for who gets to control certain sections of the beach. Got a big group of cormorants here on the island. And as you can see, the wildlife is just as curious about the camera in a lot of cases as we are about them when we're doing some filming. All right. So I have a few questions that have come into the chat, so maybe I'll answer a few of those now. Okay. Well, Jensen wants to know what the largest animal in the world is. Jensen, I'm going to keep you in suspense for a little bit longer. We're going to get to see that largest animal pretty soon. Miss Bendel's grade 5s want to know about if we came across any aggressive shark species, and we did not. Let me have a little think back. So the shark species we've encountered, reef sharks when we were in Fakareva, which is in the Pacific Ocean. Just recently when I was in Cape Town in the Hans Bay area, I did a dive with some bronze whalers. And then in Australia, we came across a few shark species. We came across some Port Jackson sharks, some wobbegongs. We'll see some of those a little bit later. And so, no, we didn't have any negative encounters with sharks. We got some great footage. It was awesome to be able to see them. But nope, no negative encounters with sharks. I wouldn't say that they were very aggressive either. For the most part, we're lucky that they stick around because divers look pretty weird and make pretty weird sounds in the water. And oftentimes the sharks will leave and we don't get to see them all the time. So we'll do a few more questions in a moment, but let's get to our next clip. So in the next clip, we are going to reveal, actually, no, almost ready to reveal the biggest animal. First, we have this really cool clip from one of the most remote places. This is the southern tip, Puerto Arenas of Argentina, of South America, one of the most farthest south points. We were able to wedge our Starlink unit into the back of a small Zodiac, and then we were racing along the coast and broadcasting live, and we had some really cool visitors join us live. So this is Luca, one of our Darwin leaders. Oh yeah, whoa. That's Nico in the front, one of the camera operators. It's a very tiny rubber boat. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're doing this live. This is amazing. They are right under the boat. So these are Peale's dolphins. Sometimes they're called kelp dolphins. And yeah, this is a clip. This is, well, I added this music to this clip, but this is live from one of the southernmost points of South America. We've got the Starlink wedged in the back of the tiny Zodiac, and it just happened. You never know with nature. Nature never cooperates. It never shows up when you want it. But it just happened to be broadcasting live with classrooms, and we had these dolphins racing with the Zodiac close enough that if Nico wanted to, he could have pushed the dolphins out of the way. So that was a really, really special moment. One of our favorite moments of the journey, for sure. So I promised Jensen the answer to the largest animal on the planet. So we were in the fjords of Chile, making our way towards Peru when we had this encounter. We came across the blue whale. The blue whale is the largest animal on the planet. Its heart is so big. If you've ever seen those Volkswagens, those little VW Beetles, that's kind of a similar size. And the aorta, which is the giant artery that leaves the heart, is so big that you could probably fit inside of it. So blue whales are absolutely massive. They're the largest thing that's ever lived on the planet that we know of. And so, yeah, we got this great drone footage of this blue whale just in one of the fjords, kind of one of the bays as we were heading out towards the open ocean. And on this day, we were pretty lucky. Not only was there the blue whale, we came across a few humpback whales as well. So you can see the humpback whales with those really distinctive, really long pectoral fins. So that's a couple humpback whales. Now, my next time catching up with the ship was in Peru. I went to Peru early. I spent a week in the Amazon rainforest with no people or cars or electricity or hot water. It was amazing. Just me and a guide in the middle of the rainforest. We saw jaguars and tapirs and harpy eagles. But then it was time to meet the ship in Lima, Peru. And I was able to sail on the ship from Lima to Salinas in Ecuador. And, well, let me give you an idea of what the ocean looks like when you're sailing on the tall ship. So this is me. I climbed up to the top of the mast. I have one of our Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants flags up there with me. And then Rodri and Josh were flying the drone so we could get this really cool footage. So this is me on top of the mast of the Oosterschelde. And then as we slowly back out, you can see nothing but ocean. And then you can see the ship here as well. Just this little speck in the middle of the ocean. So very, very cool. In the distance, I could see whale spouts. There were whales in the distance. It was right close to sunset. So that was pretty cool to be able to get up on top of the mast like that. And then having the drone up to catch that footage as well. It was pretty neat. This is also from that same part of the journey. Sometimes you're out on the ocean and there is nothing. You feel like you're on a desert, just nothing but blue. And then sometimes it just explodes into life. Like this pod of dolphins here, there must have been hundreds of them. They call them a super pod when there's so many of them together in a group like this. I think these were common Pacific dolphins. And as we back out a little bit with the drone, so the drone was flying backwards here to catch this footage. You can see pretty much as wide as you can see this massive superpod of dolphins jumping and swimming through the water. The drone's pretty low, so some of those splashes were getting pretty close to the drone too. Well, that's some pretty cool footage there. I think it was Rodri flying the drone that time. Okay. Well, we had to continue to the Galapagos, which it's still part of Ecuador, but it's about 1,000 kilometers away. It's this little island archipelago right on the equator, famous island. If you know about Darwin and the Voyage of the Beagle, a lot of what he saw there helped him come up with his theory of natural selection to describe what's going on in evolution. And so we spent almost a month in the Galapagos. We had several groups of Darwin leaders join us. This was the next time that I came and joined the ship, was in the Galapagos. And I've got this little sizzle reel from one of our camera operators just to highlight the marine side of the Galapagos. We've got our marine iguanas, the only lizards in the world that swim in the ocean, find their food in the ocean. So there is that marine iguana cruising around looking for some algae on the rocks. There are invasive species in the Galapagos, like that tree frog, but the marine life is incredible. It is cold, nutrient-rich waters, so cold water full of nutrients, deep, deep down, hits the islands and gets forced up to the surface. We call that upwelling. And that's why the waters are so full of nutrients, and then that leads to a ton of life, both in the water and on land. And so we saw those sea lions there. Every time you get into the water in the Galapagos, you play with the sea lions because they're curious and they're there and they want to be involved in whatever's going on. They're pretty fun. They like to play just like, well, basically like kids. It's the young sea lions that like to play the most. So after the Galapagos, we had to cross the Pacific Ocean, which, as you know, is the largest ocean. If you look at the Earth from certain angles, looking right at the Pacific Ocean, you don't really see any land. You just see ocean. It is a huge expanse to cover. And when we got to Tahiti, to a little group, a little area called Fakarava, we were able to do some diving. We were able to dive. Let's get that clip ready. We were able to take a day, rent some gear, and do some diving. So our researcher on board at the time, Maria, she was doing coral transects, so looking at the health of the coral, covering different lines of coral, looking at the biodiversity. And then in the future, these transects can be done again, so we can see how the coral has changed, either positively or negatively. But I can tell you, this is some of the healthiest coral we encountered on the whole journey. And it was such rich in marine life, in biodiversity. Sometimes it was like you'd be swimming in an aquarium. There was so much fish life. In this next shot, I think it's coming up next, you're going to see what I mean by what it's like to be diving in an aquarium. But it's not an aquarium. This is open ocean. So let's see. You can see how healthy the reefs are. You can see the different colors there. No bleaching visible, which is what happens when the coral gets too warm. The symbiotic algae will leave the coral and it turns white. And if the temperatures don't steady and that algae doesn't come back, then that coral can die. This gives you a good look at some of that marine life, some of the biodiversity, the variety of marine life. And then if you look in the background, you can see a reef shark. So a sign of a really healthy reef is sharks. If reefs are healthy, there's going to be sharks. And I think you can tell that this is a healthy reef by the amount of fish here. The sheer mass of fish, like swimming through a wall of fish. And then we can see our sharks there. So sharks are keystone species. They're really important part of the reef ecosystem because they keep numbers in check. And they also will pick off the unhealthy, the older fish as well. But they are really important for the health of a reef ecosystem, and they're indicators of a really healthy reef ecosystem. So this wall of sharks that we encountered with the fish is a really, really good sign for this area. All right. So, well, not only did we dive during the day, we did some diving at night. Some of the crew or some of the team did some night diving. So at night, there's this really cool migration. It's actually the largest migration in the world, and it happens every night. And we don't know much about it. I bet some of you haven't heard about it. But at night, all of these sea creatures rise up from the depths closer to the surface. And then as it gets light again in the morning, they all descend back into that darkness. And this massive migration happens all throughout our planet's ocean every single night. And so this is just some of, they call it black water diving, when you jump into the open ocean at night using your light, your torches, to see. A lot of the creatures are very small, single-celled or multi-celled organisms, but there is some fish life like we're seeing here as well. There's a lot of like larvae, so younger marine life. So there we go. That's what it's like, a black water dive. We eventually got across that huge, huge Pacific Ocean, and we made our way to Sydney, Australia. Sydney is such an iconic harbor. And the harbor itself is just jam-packed with marine life. So I was seeing some clips from one of our researchers who worked with the Darwin leader, Vanessa. She was sharing some clips of the humpback whales right in the harbor. So the humpback whales will sometimes come right into Sydney Harbor. Sharks and other marine life also, fish. The fur seals call the harbor home as well. So this was us coming into the iconic Sydney Harbor. And I caught up with the ship again with my Starlink equipment, and we did some live stuff from the field. So we were able to broadcast this dive live. I'm going to turn the volume down a little bit because the bubbles are kind of loud. But this was a live dive, and we were searching for weedy sea dragons. And I was using our ROV as a handheld camera. So I was holding our remotely operated vehicle as if it was a camera and using that to record. And look at this. This is a weedy sea dragon. These are one of my favorite underwater creatures. They're related to the seahorse, so they're kind of similar looking. They don't grab onto surfaces like the seahorses do with their tails. They kind of drift through the water. They have incredible camouflage here in this little bit of seaweed. They eat little tiny shrimp like creatures out of the water. They have tiny little fins. You might be able to see it running along its back, kind of down towards the tail region. There's that little bit of vibration. That's how they gently propel themselves through the water. And they just kind of drift and blend in so beautifully with the environment around them. Some people will dive looking for them and not see them at all. We were lucky enough to see 3 over the course of 2 dives that we did. We were able to find 3. Their camouflage is so good. It's really quite impressive. I want to give a shout out. I see Miss Dillon's crew from Missouri is joining us. So if you have any questions, Mrs. Dillon, don't be shy. Put them into the private chat. And the second dive, well, I did 4 dives while we were visiting Sydney. And on this one, we were looking for sharks. We went to a place called Magic Point, which is outside of the harbor. And I had just gotten into the water and was filming with my GoPro when I found this wobbegong shark. They're also called carpet sharks because of the patterns, the ornate patterns they have on their back. But this grouper, this blue grouper, had other ideas. It didn't want me to film the shark. It wanted me to pay attention to it. So the blue groupers are pretty big. They can live for a long time. but this one moved away so I could film the shark again. And so here we are getting close to this wobbegong, and nope, the blue grouper back here again, pushing out of the way. And yeah, getting in the way with us. Back to the wobbegong shark. They're ambush predators, so they'll wait on the bottom for something to swim over. And throughout this dive, I had my friend following and joining me. And I finally figured out what this blue grouper wanted. It wanted a scratch. So you can see it is very happy to be getting a little scratch here. Sometimes they call blue groupers the Labradors of the sea because they're so curious and they're so interactive with divers. So you can see this one here. Well, this is what it wanted. It wanted a little scratch. So very, very cool. So the wobbegong you saw there, also called the carpet shark, and then that blue grouper that just would not leave me alone until it got on camera and it got that scratch there. So pretty cool. All right. What was the most exciting thing? This is from Miss Bendel's grade 5 class. What was the most exciting thing that I saw or did on our ocean adventures? Well, one of the things that's going to stick with me forever, you saw that earlier video when you saw the bioluminescence, that kind of aquamarine glow in the water. Well, one night we were sailing, total darkness. I was up at the front of the boat at the bow, and it throws up a bow wave on either side. It makes this wake, this bow wave. It pushes up as the boat cuts through the water. And the bow wave was disturbing the dinoflagellates, so it was making this beautiful aquamarine color. Then this group of dolphins, maybe 5 or 6 of them, started to swim in that bow wave. It was so dark that if it wasn't for the bioluminescence, you never would have known the dolphins were there. But because the dolphins were disturbing the water, swimming in the bioluminescence, the dolphins' bodies were glowing and outlined in that beautiful aquamarine color. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen, and one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen. And then as dolphins would join, it looked like torpedoes coming towards the ship, because you would see this green aquamarine colored line making its way to the ship and then joining up at the front. We tried to film it, but it would just, the cameras weren't able to pick up that gentle light. We could see it beautifully with our eyes, but the cameras just couldn't pick it up. That was pretty much the coolest thing that I've ever seen on the ocean, and I think it's definitely something that'll stick with me forever. Miss Coburn's crew is wondering what the food chain was like. Well, I'll use the example from this dive here that I just showed you from Magic Point. So you would have seen some small fish species around us, and those would have been eaten by the wobbegong. So some of those fish that maybe got too close to the wobbegong would be ambushed, especially at night. They like to hunt at night. They're really good nocturnal predators. Those fish would have been feeding off of smaller fish. They would have also been feeding off of small crustaceans in the water, small crabs, small shrimp. And then in turn, those would have been feeding from the base of that food chain, which would have been the algae and the zooplankton. So the single-celled organisms, or the algae that's growing on the rocks. The parrotfish that we saw would be feeding on little bits of coral. So they're able to crunch up and feed on that coral. And then the grouper would eat smaller fish. It would also eat kind of little leftover bits that the sharks might leave behind. And then if we want to go right to the top of the food chain, I guess it would be me there in the water. So when we fish and we pull things out of the water, yeah, we're up there too. We're part of that food chain eating those fish. Grouper are endangered in a lot of places because we do fish for them. All right, let's get back into some more video clips. As we had to come all the way back across the Pacific after Australia and New Zealand, we went through what they call the roaring 40s and the furious 50s, because it's some of the roughest waters on the planet. So this crossing took us 7 weeks, And well, let me show you some of the waters that they encountered on this crossing. All right, so you can see how intense that was. They had nets up so that people wouldn't fall overboard, ropes running along that people could hold on to. Sometimes the whole side would disappear underwater, and that wasn't the worst of it. We had some rougher waters than that, but that's just one of the clips that when the camera guy was able to be, the camera operator was able to be on deck, Tom, to film that. Sometimes it just wasn't safe to be up on deck to try and film some of that. And then being out there, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, we see creatures that people rarely get to see, like these beaked whales. It's very rare that we have sightings of beaked whales. They hunt very deep in the water. Oftentimes they're way out in the middle of places like the Pacific Ocean. So it's very rare to have these encounters. And believe it or not, this happened during one of our live World's Most Exciting Classroom events, but we were doing it for classrooms on the Australia, New Zealand side of the world. So again, you never know what's going to happen in a live event. And this encounter with the beaked whales, it only lasted maybe 15 seconds and then they were gone. And it happened to happen during one of our live connections. So the very last bit of this will take us up to date, really. This is when we made it to Cape Town, when we made it to South Africa. So again, I joined the ship while we were there, and I did some stuff out in the ocean. So you can see here, Tom, our camera operator, is out in a little Zodiac, and he's waiting for the ship to appear so we can get some cool footage of the Oosterschelde. So this is Cape Town in the background. You can see Signal Hill, and then you can see Table Mountain in the background. You can see these dolphins just off the coast. And then there she is. Here's the Oosterschelde. We made a trip from Cape Town to Simonstown, where we had some special events, and then we came back to Cape Town. So this is on our return from Simonstown, coming back to Cape Town. So some really cool footage here. We broadcast. I was able to use our ROV to do a live shark dive. So we'll watch this for maybe 30 seconds. So this was with a group called Marine Dynamics, who we were working with some of our Darwin leaders. And we were able to do this cage dive with the bronze whalers. And we broadcast this live for classrooms using our ROV as a handheld camera. So I'm in the cage. I've got the ROV in my hands, and we're recording these super awesome bronze whalers. All right. I owe a couple of answers here. So my job. Well, my job, I used to be a teacher. I taught science and math for a few years, but then I started my organization, Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For over 10 years now, we've been doing live events for classrooms, connecting them with scientists, explorers, adventurers, and conservationists all over the world. Maybe I'll keep this video playing while I answer the question too. Let me get that playing again. There we go. And so, yeah, that is my job is doing this, but then my job also lets me get out into the field to do some of the really special events live whenever we can. And so the part of the question is, how often do I get to dive with my job? And the easy answer is anytime I go somewhere where there's ocean, I will make time to dive while doing my job. And being able to bring the footage, or best of all, do it live for classrooms is something that's really, really special. And Miss Dillon's class in Missouri is also asking, they tuned in, they didn't hear the name of that sea creature that looked like a seahorse. That's a weedy sea dragon. A weedy sea dragon, they're only found in Australia. There's also a leafy sea dragon found around South Australia. So look that up if you have some time. The leafy sea dragons are pretty cool as well. Susie from Marine Dynamics took me for a kelp free dive one morning. So we just had our masks and snorkels. I had my GoPro camera, and Susie had a little white canister. We'll talk about that in a second. But here we are going through the kelp forest. Again, another spot, cold, nutrient-rich water, so lots of life. That little white canister Susie has is full of sardines. So we would take the canister, shake it up to get some of that fishy smell out, and then drop it and wait to see who came out in the kelp forest. And we found lots of little species of sharks came to visit. We had cat or leopard cat sharks like this one. We also had some cat shy sharks as well. Or sorry, not dark shy sharks. Dark shy sharks and leopard cat sharks were the two little sharks that were most interested in this bait canister. So you can see there's lots of invertebrates like sea stars and sea urchins in the kelp forest as well. There's little clams and gastropods like little snails. Fish, of course, lots of different fish species. They were interested in the canisters as well. And then on our very last drop of the canister, we had this octopus, this common octopus, reach out from under the rock. And it tried to steal our bait canister. So we had to very gently remove the octopus from our canister so we could get it back at the end. But you can see octopus are very smart and very, very curious creatures. So this one here very much wanted to investigate what we had going on. There are fur seals in the kelp forest area. We didn't see any, though, while we were doing our snorkel. When I was in California, in Monterey, diving in the kelp forest, we saw some harbor seals, which was pretty cool. And then the little sharks look like catfish. Well, those leopard cat sharks have little barbels on the front of their, two of them on the front of their rostrum, their snout, and they use those to detect changes in the water. So similar to a catfish. And the very last clip to share with you is from St. Helena, which was our last stop before Ascension. And we were able to film these green sea turtles on the beach. It's a real conservation story here. The numbers had fallen, but with good conservation, now hundreds and hundreds of sea turtles are coming up on the beach to lay their eggs each night. So here we have this green sea turtle laying some eggs. She'll lay about 100, and she'll do that about 7 times each season. One of the reasons why sea turtles lay a lot of eggs will be apparent in this final clip. When the sea turtles hatch, thousands of them each night on the beach, they make a desperate dash to the ocean, but there's predators waiting for them. They're part of the food chain. And these frigate birds, they have to run a gauntlet of frigate birds. I think the number is something like 1 of every 1,000 will make it to adulthood, sea turtles. It may actually be higher than that, or 1 in every several thousand will make it to adulthood. And the first adventure is just to make it to the beach and then to make it to the ocean. And as we can see here, the frigate birds will catch these baby sea turtles and feed them to their chicks. So, if they weren't catching sea turtles, their chicks wouldn't be eating. It's just part of the food chain. It's hard to resist not getting in the way of nature and stopping the birds, but that's not what you do as a scientist or a camera operator. You kind of just let nature happen. And so you can see these sea turtles getting picked off, but enough of them, like this tough guy here, make that charge, make that battle to the ocean. Really close call. And then this one here made it to the ocean. So thousands and thousands of them. A lot of them go at night. Some of them hatch first thing in the morning, which obviously makes them a little more vulnerable to predators. But yeah, that takes us right up to date with some of our incredible ocean adventures as we've been making our way around the world. It has been absolutely wild to see the videos that the camera operators send me, to be able to get out into the field and experience some of it for myself. I want to take a couple of minutes here and bring in a few more of our camera groups to see if they have some questions. Feel free to put more questions in the chat, but I'll start with Mrs. Bendel's fifth graders. If you have a question or two and you want to turn on your mic, we would love to steal those questions. And then I'll check in with Miss Colburn's crew next and see if they have a couple more questions for us. Miss Bendel, if you can unmute the mic, if you have a question or two.
Hi, yeah, we're an online class, so they can't come to my can't come to the mic. I don't think you could hear them. Azariah, what's your question? And I'll just interpret it. Oh, you're muted, Azariah. Yeah, I could hear you. I don't know if they could hear you.
We didn't hear it. No, you'll have to push it through for us.
Okay. Oh, I think he answered that one already, Azariah. Someone else asked, do you actually fish when you're on?
So they do. Someday, they're usually always while they're sailing, they have a line off the back of the ship. Most of the time, they don't catch anything, but sometimes they get really lucky and catch something like a mackerel or a little tuna or something like that. So they have had some really successful big catches, and then they eat really well that night with some fresh fish. But it doesn't happen a lot that they have those catches. But the crew is always trying because, you know, fresh fish on the ocean is always something that's pretty special, especially when you've been out for weeks and the fresh, you know, vegetables are gone and fruit. Yeah, it's nice to have that fresh fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen as often as they'd like.
Thank you.
All right, no worries. Miss Coburn's crew, another virtual crew joining us today. How are we doing?
We're fantastic. How are you?
Good, good.
We have Lexi here that's going to put her mic on and ask you a question.
Perfect.
Go ahead, Lexi.
Hello.
Hi, Lexi.
How old are sea turtles and how much do they weigh?
Sorry, was that how old are green turtles?
How old are sea turtles and how much do they weigh?
Great question. So it depends on the species. Some of them can live 50 years. Scientists think some of them can live to up to 100 years. And then depending on the turtle, the leatherback is the largest species, and they can be over 1,000 pounds. They are massive sea turtles. They eat jellyfish. Not as easy to see as a diver. I've seen the olive ridley and the hawksbill and the loggerhead and the green sea turtle, but I have not been lucky enough to see a leatherback yet. So they can get absolutely massive. Yeah, 7 species of sea turtle. All of them, unfortunately, are threatened or endangered. And there's a variety of reasons, whether it's caught as bycatch, whether it's intentionally caught for food, pollution, from, you know, eating plastics that look like jellyfish and things like that. So a whole host of reasons why sea turtles are in trouble. That's a great question. All right. Do we have another one handy?
Jensen, are you ready to put your... Jensen is joining us for the first time. Jensen,
okay.
throw your
Welcome,
mic
Jensen.
on. Ask a question.
Has there ever been a species of ocean life that got in the way of like your boat that you had to deal with?
Great question, because it does happen. There's unfortunately ship strikes, especially the northern right whales. There's only about 400 of them left in the wild, and ship strikes are a big issue. Happily for us, we never really had any issues. We had whales close to the boat, never close to hitting the boat. We had a few birds come and rest on the boat when they were really tired from being out on the open ocean. In fact, we had a booby join us once, and it was so exhausted, it landed on the boat, and a little while later it passed away. But our bird scientist on board, Grant, was able to do a dissection for the passengers on board, who thought that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
So yeah, we took advantage of the situation, and we did a little science with the bird. So yep, other than birds kind of landing on the ship, actually one of the coolest ones we had, believe it or not, as we were sailing through Sydney Harbor when we first arrived, a kookaburra came and landed on the mast, which is super unusual, and it sat on the mast for quite a while. So that was pretty cool, and definitely unexpected, because obviously they're based on the land. We weren't that far from land, but it was really cool to have a kookaburra come and land on the ship. All right. Well, thanks, Miss Coburn's crew. I'm going to tuck you backstage for the moment.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Miss Bendel's crew is wondering about the Darwin Leaders. Well, the Darwin Leaders are 18 to 25 years old. They apply for a chance to come out to the ship when we're in port. We usually have 5 of them come and visit in each port. We fly them to the ship, and then they work with a conservation group in the field. Maybe it's sea turtles, maybe it's sharks, maybe it's dolphins, maybe it's algae or coral that they're working with. And then they create 3 videos. So they have a camera operator in the field with them. They do social media, learn new skills. And then we hope when they go back home to their countries that they continue their career in conservation, and that they're going to be conservationists for the next 30, 40, 50 years, having a big impact in the places where they live on land and in the ocean. So that is our Darwin Leaders. One more question in the chat. What is a kookaburra? Well, a kookaburra is kind of like a kingfisher. If you've ever seen a kingfisher before, they're a bit bigger, and they, instead of fish, they're more land-based, and they're looking for things like lizards, small snakes, insects, things like that. And they have a very distinct, so look up kookaburra and listen to their call. It's a laughing sound. It's very, very distinct. You won't forget it after you've heard it once. And actually, I lived in Australia for a year. And when I was visiting a place called Magnetic Island, I was on a patio eating chicken wings, and a kookaburra dove down, smashed onto my plate, and stole a chicken wing. Believe it or not. It landed in the tree and ate the chicken wing. And I went back to my meal, and a minute later, it did the exact same thing again. So, unbeknownst to me, I would be sharing that meal of chicken wings with a kookaburra, which was pretty crazy. So yeah, kookaburra, look them up. They're pretty darn cool. Okay, so 2 more things to do to wrap up today. We have to look at our experiment and get a brand new one. So 2 weeks ago, our experiment was the pitfall trap. We wanted students to put little pitfall traps, little cups in their schoolyards or in their backyard at home, and see what they caught. With it being springtime, what might come and fall into their tiny little pitfall traps. Let's take a look at the results from when we did our pitfall experiment. Let me see if I can find the results video. There it is. Let's take a look.
Welcome back. I'm really happy to say that the pitfall traps worked really well, and we've got a range of animals that I can't wait to show you. Well, let's see what they caught. Starting with the control traps, which didn't have any bait in, unsurprisingly, they haven't really caught much. This one here has only 2 little woodlice in. And I suppose that might be explained by the fact that woodlice often forage and look for different leaf litter and roam around during the night. So maybe they just fell in by accident. This white container here has a centipede, which I was not expecting at all. Centipedes wouldn't be attracted to any of the bait that we put here, neither the bananas nor the biscuits, because they're carnivores. So presumably this little guy fell into the trap, while he was looking for victims to eat. But yeah, now he became trapped himself. The glass beaker with a piece of biscuit caught this very adventurous snail that's trying to escape, and about 20 woodlice that were obviously attracted to the biscuit inside. Woodlice have very acute senses, so that partly explains why they'd be attracted to this beaker and fall inside. I'm not entirely sure why the snail went in. Maybe he fell in by accident, a bit like the centipede before. This white plastic pot that also contains a piece of biscuit also trapped lots of little woodlice, but it also has a small earthworm. This is another animal I wasn't really expecting to be trapped by these pitfall traps, but it did rain a little bit last night, so maybe the earthworm came to the surface and was exploring and also just happened to fall in. The last two pitfall traps contain pieces of banana peel, and it looks like this was even more popular than the pieces of biscuit. These traps are absolutely full of woodlice. This one has easily 30, 40 little woodlice scurrying around, and the glass beaker has a similar number too. So they obviously really like banana. That's something I didn't know. Once you've had a good look at your creatures, don't forget to put them back where you found them. This snail here is trying to escape, so I think he definitely wants to go home. So it's probably time we put all these amazing little invertebrates back into their natural habitats.
All right, so that is what Stu caught in the Darwin, well, not in the Darwin studio, but around the Darwin studio back in the UK. We had a really great entry come in. Let me share this entry. Let me share my screen from Miss Roll's crew in the UK. And so we're going to send them a gift card, but I want to put their little image on the screen. Let's see, there it is. So here is one of their pitfall traps, and they got some woodlice like Stu had. It looks like they had a little centipede-like creature that maybe fell in by accident. And then they've got lots of beetles that came in. Looks like they used banana peel as their bait in their pitfall trap. Looks like they used a beaker as well for their container. So that's pretty cool. Big shout out to Miss Roll's crew for sending that in to us. So as always tends to happen here at the world's most exciting classroom, we're going to run about 5 minutes long today because I need to give you a brand new experiment that you can try this week with your classroom. So let's take a look at that brand new experiment before we say goodbye for today. So here we go. Experiment coming your way.
Welcome back, everyone. In this week's experiment, we're going to create rainbow rain. This is a really fun experiment and a very colourful one. To do this experiment, you need a jar or a beaker of water, some oil. You can use cooking oil or baby oil. I'm going to use cooking oil deliberately because it's yellow, so you'll see the difference with the water. But baby oil that's see-through works absolutely fine too. Then you need as many types of food colouring as possible. These have to be liquid, water-based food colouring. So try and get as many different colours to make your rainbow rain as beautiful as you can. The first step is to get your beaker of oil. About 400 millilitres is fine, but you can have more or less if you want to. And then you've got to put in drops of food colouring. The more you use, the more colourful your experiment will be. So I'm going to start with some blue. Try and separate them out as many little drops as you can. That should then sink down to the bottom. I'm going to use red next. Let's add some red droplets of food colouring. And these might actually mix in the oil to make some purple if we're lucky as well. Then some green. And then some yellow food colouring as well. Quite a bit of yellow in there. So once you've added your food colouring, you then have to mix up the oil to make as fine little droplets of food colouring as possible. Give it a good stir and a good mix. It's pretty well mixed, I think. And you're then ready to create your very own rainbow rain. Let's pour this in and see what happens. Look, can you see what's happening? The food colouring is sinking down to the bottom of the layer of oil and coming down as rainbow rain. We've got quite a bit of red. Is this a blue one? Yep, look, there's a blue one. It does take a few minutes for the food colouring to settle, but keep watching and you should see a beautiful display of rainbow rain. The more you mix your mixture of oil and food colouring, the finer the droplets in the oil, and the thinner and smaller and finer the rainbow rain is in your water. My rainbow rain is quite active. Look, can you see these big swirling sections of blue dripping down from the oil layer into the bottom? It's a little bit like a lava lamp, isn't it? Can you recreate this experiment in your classroom and work out why the oil, the water and the food colouring creates this rainbow rain effect? Send in your answers to classroom@darwin200.com and we'll find out the answer in 2 weeks' time. Good luck in creating your very own rainbow rain, and thank you for watching.
Okay, so there we go. 2 weeks to try that rainbow rain experiment in your classroom, or you could try it at home. Send in some pictures giving it a try to classroom@darwin200.com. I'll put that back on the screen one more time, classroom@darwin200.com. And we just may have an Amazon gift card for your classroom. 1 week as well for our curiosity of the week. So last week's curiosity was this. I have it here in my office. I told you it was not man-made. It wasn't glass. It's smooth and pale green. And this particular sample came from Mexico. And so the answer to this week is green calcite. So green calcite was our curiosity of the week from last week. This sample here was from the ground in Mexico. We had some good guesses from classrooms, but no one got it quite right. I think green smithite was the closest, and they are a very similar, closely related mineral. But this specific one that I have here is green calcite. So we have a brand new curiosity for this week. Let's play this little 30-second clip. And then we'll wrap up for today. So here we go. Here is our brand new curiosity for this week.
Back everyone. For this week's curiosity, I have 2 little fossils. Your task is to identify what type of organism these are. If you look really carefully, you can see the shape of the body of the animal in this fossil. The eyes are up here at the front. It has a long, complicated body structure right the way to the back. Can you work out what type of animal this is? Send in your best guess to classroom@darwin200.com for a chance to win an Amazon gift voucher prize. Join me next week to find out the answer. Good luck and thank you for watching.
Okay, so there we go. That is our curiosity of the week. You have 1 week to send your best guesses to classroom@darwin200.com. We'll put that up one more time. You have 2 weeks to send in your best photos from trying the rainbow rain experiment to classroom@darwin200.com. Okay, there we go. That is, that is our event for today. Thank you so much for joining us during World Ocean Week. I hope everyone has a great week. We still have lots of world's most exciting events, classroom events to come up, including, I'll announce right now, it'll be out in a newsletter as well, June 19th. One of our ambassadors, Jane Goodall, will join us live on June 19th at this usual time, 9 o'clock Eastern. So we hope your classrooms can join us then to hear from Jane. It's always great to hear her speak, and I think we'll definitely have time for your students to ask Jane some questions. So the 19th, we will have that event. We'll have another World's Most Exciting Classroom next week as well. Same time, Thursday at 9 o'clock Eastern. So the last thing we have to do today is a shout out to our sponsors, our supporters, our partners, without whom we wouldn't be sailing around the world, hosting the world's most exciting classroom, bringing young Darwin leaders out to the ship, and having our researchers from the Explorers Club come and join us. Like Mariana right now, who's doing eDNA samples from 200 meters to see what life is living in the ocean there. Pretty darn cool. So big shout out to those sponsors. Thank you to our classrooms and educators for hanging out today. We'll see you next week, and we're going to sign off for now. Thanks, everyone.